y'all, and welcome to my channel. I am so excited to be starting this little YouTube channel. Honestly, at first I was like, there's a million fish keeping, fish hobbyist YouTubers, like the world does not need another one. But really what I wanted to do was like start from scratch. I wanted to help people avoid all of the common mistakes that when we start the fish keeping hobby we get into. Makes a ton of people quit, makes a ton of people think that fish are hard to keep, they're hard to keep alive, they're just disposable pets, and none of that is accurate. So I was just really excited to kind of start and do things a little bit differently, and I wanted to start from scratch and just kind of give y'all my background and hopefully go through some of the mistakes that I have made and help you to avoid them at all costs, because it sucks. So my first fish ever was a betta. I feel like they're most people's gateway fish. And that just kind of started. My grandma always had like 2 or 3 of them around her house in the little bowls, and she did take like immaculate care of them. And it's just a common misconception that it's okay to keep bettas in little bowls. They do have the ability to breathe air, but it's not ideal, and it's not happy, healthy, safe fish keeping. But that's where I started. I had the cute little cube that hung on the wall in my room, and yeah, I loved my little betta. Once I learned, I wanted him to have more room and more space to swim around, and I was gonna set him up a 10-gallon anyway. Then I learned that bettas can go in with other community fish. So the fact that you cannot put bettas in with anything else is also extremely false, but you do have to be careful what you put them in with. And this is where like all of the trouble seems to start. Not slamming on the big box stores, PetSmart, Petco, Pet Supplies, whatever you may have around you, but a lot of times you get somebody that's not educated in fish keeping, and I don't think that they're there with malintent. But they're just not educated. And so you get the person that says, okay, you take this home, set it up, let it run for 3 days, and you can throw in fish. Absolutely not the case. You're gonna kill everything. You might pick some little schooling community fish that just happen to be super hardy and may get through that tank cycling, but it is gonna substantially shorten their life, and it's gonna stress them a lot. And then they tell you like everything labeled community can go together, everything labeled semi-aggressive you're going to want to watch, everything labeled cichlid can go together, which if you've ever been in a box store are mixed, you don't even know what you're getting. If they're separated by species, they're not separated by lake. You might have Africans and Americans, and it's just, they cannot just all go together because they're labeled cichlid. You will have a bloodbath on your hands, which is where this 55 started for me. I've had a lot of learning and growing to do with these guys, and they're still stressors for me. But I still keep a 10-gallon little betta tank. I have 5 Harlequin Rasboras in there. I have 3 autos, 2 pygmy Cory cats, and my betta is in there chilling somewhere. And this was my first planted aquarium too. So basically we're just going to help you guys avoid all of those major malfunctions, avoid all the bad advice that you get from the pet store, and just really try to like jumpstart you on a good platform. I'm totally open to any questions that you want to leave in the comments, and that will give me like some topics to kind of pick from and go through. But that's pretty much, I just don't want everybody to have the heartache, and I try to save the expense. This is an expensive hobby, but when you're going through and killing high-dollar fish, and you don't know why, and so you change this filter, which wasn't the problem, and you add this chemical, which wasn't the problem, you're spending a bunch of money. Because when you go to the pet store and say, my fish died, and they check your water and they just say, add some of this to it, and it's just a whole big vicious cycle until you're able to learn. Usually, in my experience, it's been learned from other actual practical fish keepers. And I just kind of block out the bad advice that you get from most people. You might get lucky and have somebody that works at your local pet store. Should be a local fish store, knows what's going on. That would be your best bet. But typically your local big box store, maybe you're lucky enough to get somebody that actually is a hobbyist and knows what's up, and that's super helpful. And the other thing is you're gonna get so many different opinions. So if you go talk to somebody up there one day and you don't get the same person the next time, it's not necessarily maybe that they're wrong, it's just two differing opinions. It could be one's really wrong. But so where we're just gonna start is back at that setting up your first aquarium. So you're setting up your first aquarium. It's so convenient to go to the big pet stores, honestly, and get the kits. Usually they've got hoods, tank, not usually the stand, but filtration, maybe a little heater. But that's basically what you're gonna have to have, is your tank, filtration, heater. I highly recommend an air stone. That's a totally different video, but just save yourself some misery and have one. Yeah, substrate, maybe whatever little decorations you want. And it totally depends on the type of fish that you're keeping. That is another separate video. Today we're just going to talk about setting up your aquarium and getting it established before fish. But you do need to look at tank size or look at what type of fish you're wanting to keep so that you know where to set up. If you can only afford whatever you can afford, then shop for fish within that size range. But definitely if there's like a fish that you know you want to keep, you just think they're the cutest thing in the world, make sure that you're setting yourself up for success in purchasing your tank size. But anyway, you're going to fill it up with water, treat the water with not water softener, but like a water conditioner. So I actually I have the Aquarium water conditioner. I have the cheapo AquaSafe water conditioner. But honestly, my favorite is going to be this API stress coat. This has aloe in it, and I have aloe in like every aspect of my life. So I have been double treating because after all of this rain, the water municipalities are adding extra chemical. So you can't really overdose your water conditioner. I mean, you don't want to dump the whole bottle in, but I've actually been treating twice with 2 different conditioners when I do water changes, just to make sure that there's not a lot of chlorine killing my fishes. So you're going to treat the water with water conditioner, and if you're doing a regular cycle on your tank, then you're going to have to let that run for anywhere from 6 weeks to 2 months, maybe longer, without fish. Now, if you're really lucky and you've either got a cool local fish store or you've got a friend who's already in the hobby, you can instant cycle a tank with already seeded media. And I'm going to break all that down, but basically your beneficial bacteria is going to be the good bacteria that grows on the substrate, different surfaces, and not really in the water column, but there's a trace amount, and then in your filtration. And so this right here is the canister filter that I'm running on this 55-gallon. I love it. Filtration is another video, but there are several trays of biomedia in that are just like little growing areas for that beneficial bacteria. So I have made the mistake of changing out all my filter media because you clean the filters and you put a new one in, and that's what you do, and that's what they tell you to do at the pet store. That's wrong. You're throwing away all that good beneficial bacteria. Now your fish are gonna die because the beneficial bacteria takes fish waste, which is ammonia. Ammonia is extremely toxic to your fish. It can burn their gills and just cause a lot of problems. They're gonna die. But that beneficial bacteria converts that ammonia into nitrites and then into nitrates, and then cleans it all out. So when you're doing your water testing, ideally all those numbers would be 0. The ammonia and the nitrites in this aquarium are almost always 0. And then the nitrates might be just a little bit, but not in a dangerous zone. But if you don't have that beneficial bacteria, there's no bacteria to convert that ammonia through that nitrogen cycle, which you can read tons about online. That's just a very brief breakdown. But you have to have that beneficial bacteria, or your fish are just basically going to kill themselves. Somebody can give you seeded material that already has that beneficial bacteria, is what we're talking about. You can take that from their filter, pop it in yours, and that's already established bacteria. You can almost instantly add fish and they're going to be fine. If they just give you a small portion of media, you're not going to want to completely stock it, because there's only enough beneficial bacteria living as there are fish to keep it alive. So if I take the beneficial bacteria out of this 55, pop it in this 10, most of that's going to die, and there's only going to be enough living to maintain the 10. So I took the filter out of this 10, put it in a 5-gallon that I have at home, that I put some fry that I found in here in. Now those fry are not going to keep all of this beneficial bacteria alive and going. And the only reason that worked, and I didn't kill these guys by removing their beneficial bacteria, is that I did put a new filter in, just the filter, there's no carbon or anything in it. I removed theirs. There is a lot of lava rock in this tank that I have plants growing on. That lava rock is very porous, and it is like a breeding ground for beneficial bacteria. This is kind of going off on a tangent, but if I remove basically half of the filter media out of this aquarium, I had to cut back on feeding these guys for a few days to let the beneficial bacteria grow in the new filter, to help that keep up. They did find it wasn't an issue, but that's one thing to take into consideration moving forward. So anyway, if you don't have somebody who can give you that seeded media, and you're going to have to go through it in the long haul, add things like just toss some fish food in, because that's going to decay and cause that same ammonia for the beneficial bacteria to start growing for. I've heard of people just adding ammonia to water. I have never tried that. In theory, that should be fine. Now we're talking about no fish. We're just adding ammonia to the water to start that water cycle. And then they make, highly don't recommend it because I've never had any luck. My sister, friends that I know, they make bottles that say Quick Star or bacteria that you're supposed to just be able to dump in that tank and go. I have added it to the water, I think on this tank, because it did fight me on ammonia to cycle at first. I did that, a fishless cycle, but I don't think it really helped. And all in all, I've not heard good things. They will try to sell that to you at the pet store. You can try it, but you might kill some fish in the process. The best thing you can do, I think most fish stores specifically, I don't know how cool your PetSmart is or Petco or whatever you got around, but most just local fish stores, they're going to squeeze out a sponge for you. They're going to give you a handful of media. They might have some sort of policy. They can't give their media away to everybody that walks in, but I would think if you asked, they might be cool about it. But that's just the biggest thing. You cannot fill this with water, wait 3 days, put some water conditioner in it, and add fish, which is exactly what they're going to tell you at almost every box store that I've ever been to. There are things that make fish keeping difficult anyway. The smaller the tank, the harder it can be to regulate. Bad fish. We've all been in some fish stores that just, half of everything is dead. They're all on one giant filtration system. there are things that are out of your grip, but there's a lot of things that aren't. And just setting yourself up for success by getting that water cycle properly before you ever add fish is really going to save you a lot of money and a lot of heartache. Again, thank you guys so much for liking, subscribing, following our little journey here. But I just wanted to start everybody off from scratch, go back through the basics, maybe answer some questions that you haven't been able to find in other YouTubers or videos. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them down below. I will try to get to everybody or create a video to address questions. But I'm just really excited about getting people into this hobby and making it less scary and answering all those questions that get answered incorrectly or don't get answered when you're just kind of thrown to the wind and you decide to go buy an aquarium and start this fish keeping hobby. It's so rewarding. I love my plants. Plants make the water so much easier to keep as well. We'll talk about that. I love my plants and I love my fish, and just nurturing something and knowing that you are taking care of them to the best of your ability to provide them with proper housing. This is a hobby. If you're not prepared to take care of that pet, just don't. If you just think that you're gonna set them up and leave them in the corner and look at them, just don't. I don't want to scare anybody away from this hobby, but they are not a disposable pet. They're not, I mean, they're like a dog. You're not going to take it for a walk, but it needs to be well cared for, well cleaned, and essentially kept alive. There's really no, accidents are going to happen, things are going to happen, you're going to lose fish, but we never really lose fish. I've had this tank for a year and haven't lost one thing that we've stocked it with. These guys have thrown me through some loops and I have lost a couple of them, but all in all, it's not as difficult as you think it is. Thank you guys so much, and I cannot wait to see you guys all again next week, where we are going to talk about stocking, picking your fish, seeing who gets along well together and who should not be mixed, who's going to grow way too big for the 25-gallon tank you have at home, who's going to eat through all that good stuff. So we will see you guys again next week.